Hey friends, welcome to Her Scars Tell a Story. I'm your host, Ann Calvillo, and today I have a very near and dear special guest joining me this morning. She is my niece, my husband's goddaughter, Lisette, and she's joining us all the way from Texas. I want you all just to give a warm welcome to her as she shares her stories and she shares her scars. Again, I always mention that the women who share their stories, they are courageous. And it's only by the grace of God that they are able to share their redeeming stories through Christ. So, Lisette, welcome, welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Anne. I'm excited to be here with you, and I wish I could be there in person. I've missed you guys so much. My name is Lisette. I was born in Chicago. My mom moved us out here in Texas when I was around 13, I think. And ever since then, I've been out here. I am the oldest out of 8 children, so basically babysitter for my mom.
Nice.
I guess when I was younger, my mom was a single mom for most of my childhood life. So, and at the time, it used to be only four of us. So I basically took on the mom duties because she was always working. It was fun and hard just to goof around with my siblings when my mom wasn't around. And then years go by and we had four more to the mix. And my stepdad is amazing. He's very kind. He's always been strict, but led me on a good path. And I'm thankful for him and all that he has done in my life and for my siblings, and most importantly, for my mom.
That's awesome, Lisa. Yeah, I remember when I got to know you and I got to see how responsible you were. You were just a young girl helping out your mom and just always such a good nurturer, even at a young age. The way you took care of your siblings, it was always so beautiful to see that, the relationship that you had with them. And again, just that responsible side of you. So tell us, what does life look like now for you?
Well, now I am a mom of soon to be four. I am currently 5 months pregnant with our fourth child. My husband and me have been married for six, coming on 6 years, I want to say. Yeah, 6 years. And he's just been everything to me, a big blessing in my life. And I am thankful that I met him.
Hmm. Yeah, and he's a good man. I've gotten to meet him, and I wish we can connect with you guys more. The distance kind of comes between us, but the good thing is we're able to talk to each other, and your family's a beautiful blessing, and you are just a good woman, a good wife and mom. Omar and I are so proud of you, and we just love the way you're growing in your relationship with the Lord, and it's just so beautiful to see, Lisa, your growth and where God has brought you from. And so going into that, starting off there where God has brought you from, can you tell us a little bit about your story?
Yeah, well, first off, I want to say I I admire you two so much. I mean, honestly, like I've never like my mom never really brought us up in any kind of religion, so seeing you and Omar always inviting me when I was younger to church and just trying to like teach me about him, and that was really inspiring, but I never really like stuck with me until I guess I grew older,
Mm.
and now I just cherish those like memories and appreciate it so much, you know.
Mm.
And from my story, you know, I always believed in God, but I've never truly like put my heart, gave him my heart and like trusted him and found the peace and comfort that I do have in him now.
Mhm.
And it's sad, but it took like a tragedy per se to happen to change us, change me. And that it didn't only just change me, but it changed like my whole family, literally. And it's like, it was obviously like a blessing in disguise for everyone, how they always say. And it's true, because I wouldn't be where I am today without him.
Mm. Yeah, Lisette, and thank you for mentioning how Omar and I have meant a lot to you on your journey with the Lord. I remember Omar buying you, I believe it was a promise ring,
Yeah.
right? A purity ring. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I
Purity ring.
remember,
I didn't know what it meant. I'm pretty
yeah.
sure you guys, sorry, told me, but I was
Uh-huh.
so young and I'm like, okay, sure.
Yeah, yeah. But he did that in faith. Lisette, I remember he said, you know what? She is my goddaughter and she doesn't have her dad in her life, but I'm going to step up and I'm going to do this for him and for her because I love her and I believe God has a plan for her. And I remember that whole little thing he did for you where he gave you the ring and a book, and I'm not sure if it was a Bible or if it was a book, but I know it really meant a lot for him to be able to do that for you, Lisette. And he's always been very fond of you and he cares deeply for you. I do thank God that he allowed us to plant that seed in your young heart. Sometimes we don't always see the fruit right away. Sometimes down the line, years pass by and we don't see the fruit until one day we get that call. And that's kind of like what happened. Can you share a little bit about that?
I remember I had called you. I'm pretty sure it was late at night, just because I was alone. I was away from my kids. I had to be away from them. I didn't know what else to do. I'm pretty sure I was crying and just trying to tell you guys what happened, but I was still like ashamed of what I did and stuff. And so I remember you guys just praying for me and speaking to me and just giving me words of life and encouragement and just letting me know that things are going to work out. And I was so thankful for that, just to have that talk with you guys and that prayer. And I know that just led me to be more dedicated to showing God, like, I have nothing left in my life. I can't do this alone, and I need you, Lord. And I think that night turned me around, because from then I was in my Bible every day, every day.
Yeah. Yeah. It took this tragedy that you mentioned coming to a place of surrendering, is what I'm hearing from you, is like just a place of surrendering to God and then reading your Bible and seeking God, because I believe that's why you reached out, because you were seeking God. At,
Yeah.
at that time, who was with you when you made the call?
Mm, nobody was with me. I believe I was just in my car alone, because I had to be away from the kids. My story has to do with me and my husband's family.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be my niece and my sister-in-law. And basically what happened during this time period, it was back in 2018. And my sister had her baby. My sister's son was 1. And then my sister-in-law's baby was 3 months, I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
And I was babysitting them too, on top of my own 2 children that I had. And mine were 3 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
So I had literally 4 kids under 5 for a good long period of time babysitting. And I never said no to babysitting anybody, because that's just how I was raised, and
Mm-hmm.
always took care of kids and was used to it and thought I could handle it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so one day I was very stressed with the kids, and they were all running around. All the little ones that were able to walk were running around. And then my niece, I had to basically carry her and watch her the whole time. And I was burping her, and there's different techniques you can burp a child. I'm pretty sure you know.
Yeah.
And so the method I was doing, it was having her sit on my lap and then holding her back and her chest and then just rocking her back and forth like that.
Mm-hmm.
And in a quick second, you don't realize how much stress you can be in watching 4 kids until like it hits you.
Mm-hmm.
So the other 3 are running around and trying to burp, and she was like, she took a while to burp. It was like 15 minutes now, and I'm like, really? And in a split second, like with all the yelling and everything and her not burping, I just kind of like rocked her back and forth a little too much, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I had taken breaks in between during that 15 minutes to give her like maybe like time to get the burp out, and then tried a different position, but then went back to that one. And then, like I said, in that split second, I rocked her too fast. So at that time, when she was throwing up, I immediately called my sister-in-law and asked her what she wanted me to do. And I just took her to her work because her work wasn't that far from me. And she worked, thankfully, like in a doctor's office.
Mm-hmm.
So they checked out my niece and she was all right. And they said nothing was wrong with her. And then later on down the line is when they found out that her brain was swelling. And they're trying to like pinpoint the cause of it. And CPS was involved. And that was a whole thing. And they were interviewing all of us. And then detectives were involved in everything as well. I'm kind of all over the place. It's like a memory I don't like to remember, and then one I know that is worth remembering because it's changed me, you know?
Yeah.
So at that time when I rushed, I had all 4 of the kids in the car. I went to my sister-in-law's work, and I told her how I was burping her, and when the doctor said that she was fine, nothing happened, like she looks okay and everything, I felt relieved. But in the back of my mind, I never could get that out of my head. Growing up, to like a little backstory, like me and my sister were put in daycare, and my sister didn't have the best experience with the people watching us, and they would take her into the bathroom and pinch her and yell at her, and they would never do anything to me but to her. So that's why I would always offer to watch anybody, like my nieces, my nephew, my cousins, or anybody. And I think that's why I never had the ability to say no or knew how to say no to anybody.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And that's something I learned how to do over this process. So after I had signed the confession with the detective and stuff, CPS came and told me and my husband I can't be around my own kids anymore. And that broke my heart.
Yeah.
I couldn't be around not just my kids, but anybody's kids. And back then, my youngest brother was only like 5, I believe. So anybody under like the age of 13, I think it was, I couldn't be around. Mm-hmm. So that led me to not be able to be home with my own family, not my mom, not my sister, because she lived out by herself too with my nephew. And basically I had nowhere to go. And thankfully, so this is all happening to my husband's side, to my sister-in-law. And she's heartbroken, and she got that call from the detective, and she's trying to call me. I didn't answer anybody's call because I was just so scared. I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to go home because I didn't want to face anybody. And it was just a hard time after leaving the police station. And, you know, it's knowing that you did something, but on accident, and you didn't mean to, because you know you would never do something like that.
Yeah.
But just thinking you can handle something,
yeah.
but And in reality, sometimes you just can't all the time, you know?
Yes, Lisette. Yes. And I think you mentioned something so important, Lisette, that you learned how to say no. And I think a lot of us as moms, as caretakers, right? It's hard for us to say no, even, even when it's more than we can handle. And it's like, we want to help others. We want to be able to step in and do what we can on our end as much as we can, right? But then we find
Yeah.
ourselves in situations at times like, I don't think I can handle all this. As I'm listening to you, I hear you say that that's something you learned throughout this process.
And, like, daycare is expensive, and that's, like, another reason why I said yes to when they asked both my sister and my sister-in-law asked me to watch their children is because I know how expensive it can be. I know that some daycares are not the best, and
Mm-hmm.
it's just easier to keep it in the family,
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've always seen my aunts watch everybody's kids, so I'm like, I can do it too.
Right.
But sometimes not everybody's capable of living up to all that, And
Right. Right.
during this situation, and
Can I
my
ask
niece,
Lisette, I'm sorry, how old were you
yeah,
when this happened?
I want to say
Okay.
22 or 23.
Yeah, so you were a very young mom trying to
Yeah,
handle your children along with the children you
almost
were
a
watching.
newborn, and
Mm-hmm.
oh yeah, all happened in November, the beginning of November of 2018.
Mm-hmm.
And that's holiday season, when families should be together. And that's like another hard part is because my sister-in-law was already going through the surgeries, but they didn't know the reason why until November. She was having the surgeries started in October, and we didn't like know why. And then November came, and that's when the detective had talked to me and it said everything. And that was just really hard on everyone, not only like his side, but my side, because everybody didn't know what to do, how to handle it. And thankfully, I have a very amazing, loving mother-in-law who let me stay with them once CPS told me I couldn't be around children. Me and my mother-in-law always had a very, very good and open, truthful and honest relationship, and she never saw anything bad in me. She still doesn't, and
Mm-hmm.
that's something I admire in her. She always has like the benefit of the doubt. Like if
Mm-hmm.
this happened, it was for a reason. And so thankfully, it was only her and one of my other sister-in-laws living in her apartment at the time. I was staying with them when I couldn't be with my own kids and my own husband
Mm-hmm.
or with my mom, and I was just so thankful, and I couldn't believe like this is your daughter that's going through it because of something I did. Like, how are you okay with me? How are you allowing me to stay with you? I don't think I would have been able to be as strong as she was, but that just also like shows me like an example of how I want to be like with my daughter-in-laws one day.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
so I'm staying with her, and during this whole month and a half, I believe, that I couldn't be home, and I had to have no contact with my sister-in-law and my niece. One thing I have to say is it was really hard on my husband, and that's what kind of broke my heart then, because in my eyes, I'm like, I have the best husband. And this is what like led me even more to the Lord is that I've never had any kind of like relationship with God or knew who his character was or what he meant in like a believer's eyes. And looking at my husband, his unconditional love for me is amazing and like unreal to me, just because that's how our God is, like
Yeah.
He loves us no matter what. He loves us no matter what mistakes we made. He loves us no matter how hard it can be on him, you know?
Yeah.
And my husband never left my side during that. And it was his own sister and his niece that everything was happening.
Mm.
He could have left me. He could have been like, I don't want to be with somebody who did that to my family, you know? I don't want you around my children. But he was out there always fighting for me, always defending me.
Mm.
Always. He always supported me. He always wanted me to just stay strong because he needed to stay strong too. And
Mm. And
it was a hard time.
that's just like the character of God. Like you said, he's our defender. And he goes
Yeah,
through great lengths to show us how gracious he is and how much he loves us, even when we feel we don't deserve it, even when we feel like, Lord, I'm not even worthy of it. But he goes to great
exactly.
lengths to show us that unconditional love he has.
And I've never known that kind of love. Like he said, and my father passed away before I was born, so I never knew him. And my mom was always a single mom, and like my stepdad didn't come until later on. But even then, I was older, and we have a good relationship, but not as one like I would say a true father would be. Even though I do see him as one now, you know,
Yes.
and just knowing that type of love was out there, and I had it all along, but I've never like truly seen it
Mm.
was an eye opener during that time, and it was just so grateful to that I had him during this time. My niece is getting surgery after surgery. I obviously don't have contact, but my husband is still able to talk and find out stuff. It was hard for his sister to like want to talk to him some, and he knew that, and he still tried to like find out what's happening because he obviously cares and
Yeah.
wants to be there for his sister too. So she is doing better and better every time,
Mm.
and then she ends up coming out of the clear and it's gone, you know, and it's just like, what? How does that happen? Because at some point they thought like she wasn't gonna make it. And once I heard that, anytime he got an update, I was like scared to ask or even find out because I didn't want to hear what happened. I didn't want to know what was going on because I was so ashamed of it. I was ashamed of what I did, what could have happened, all on a quick second in an accident. And I just wanted to be able to tell my sister-in-law and her husband that, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And me and my sister-in-law didn't. We weren't always super close, but we never were close either. After this, it was just really hard to even talk to each other. It put distance between not only my husband and her, but it put distance between the whole family, like my kids and their aunt, you know.
Yeah.
And she loves my children, and it was just a difficult time. After all the police stuff and the CPS stuff, I think the first week is when I called you guys and just asked you, what is this? Like, what can I do? How can I know the Lord and or like put my trust in Him to get me through this because I was alone. I had my mother-in-law and stuff, but obviously that was not the same as being with my mom, and I felt ashamed to even see my mom when she would meet me for lunch or something because I couldn't be around my siblings, like I said, and I could just feel the not disappointment, but I felt like I disappointed my mom and like the hurt it's causing her to see me go through that.
Yeah.
At the time, my mom was in the process of moving back to Chicago, and I was really going to be alone. Like I didn't have anybody in my support side, and I didn't see it as like I have everything I need right in front of me, which was my husband and all that he was doing. I was just consumed by feeling alone, and in like such a dark place that I couldn't even be around my children without supervision. I couldn't be around my siblings. I can't be around anybody, and it was hard. I think after that call with you guys, it just kind of sparked me up into knowing, like, you have no other way. What are you going to do now? Just give the Lord a chance. Like, me telling myself that there's no other way or there's nothing else you can do. And you were going to lose it all. Except, like, come on, wake up already. And that night, I just felt so much better after you guys prayed. I think I called you because I didn't have Omar's number. And after you prayed and talked to me, I just felt so much better. And nobody else in my family was a big religion and stuff. And so I didn't really have that outlet here. And that's why I always tried to ask you guys questions and talk to you as much as I could. And I was thankful for it, that you guys would answer me and were always available when if I needed you. After that, I obviously had to get a lawyer and all that stuff. And I had to do classes for CPS. I had to do parenting classes. I had to do anger management. And then it was like an evaluation with CPS again to see if I could go back with the kids. And during those parenting classes is when I learned to know it's okay to say no. And that class in itself was like a blessing because I would never say no. And now I say no if I don't want it. If I don't want to do something or feel okay with watching the kid, and then no hesitation to say no, sorry. And even in the anger management classes, I learned some stuff, like different ways to handle situations, like not only with kids, but like with my husband or just in everyday life, And then CPS did their evaluation, I think, 2 weeks before Christmas, and I got cleared and I was able to go back to my kids. And that,
praise God.
That time was the best news me and my husband both could have gotten. Like, we're like, what? Really? Like, you're not playing with us? And I think because during that whole time when I was away and I had nothing else to do, I was in my Bible daily. I told my husband I read the Bible front to back, not all of it during that month and a half, but I continued. Like, I obviously don't really like remember or didn't know what everything meant then and didn't understand it. But that's my way of showing the Lord, like, I was dedicated to knowing him. I went to church every Sunday by myself. I was reading his word, just seeing how powerful his words can make me feel better in those times of darkness. I was just shocked on how true they were too. I've never read the Bible, and for the first time reading it, like, I felt different. I saw things different, and I'd even like brought my husband to church and being with me at times, like when I needed prayer, and I depended on prayer so much, as I still do. And at night, like when I would go to bed and I didn't have him or the kids next to me, I would spiral per se, and then once I knew those dark thoughts were coming in, saying, you did this, and telling me my niece isn't going to make it, or how dare you, like, you're never going to get your family back, and all those words of doubt, I would just counter it with prayer and just say the truth that God says about us, saying, I am loved, I can change you, and telling me, like, you're here for a reason. You're not in jail for a reason. You're here out because you have things to be doing. to get back to your family. You have two kids already because you're supposed to be a mom. You have a husband who is fighting for you. You're here to be a sister. You're here to be an example for others. And I just stuck to those all the way until I got that call that I could go back to my kids. And right before Christmas, I just thought that was a miracle. Like, it was a short time away from my kids,
Mm-hmm.
but it was the hardest time.
Mm.
The hardest.
Yeah. Lisette, as I'm listening to you, I know I've heard bits and parts of your story, but just hearing everything that you're saying, Lisette, I can't help but to see God in and through your story, in and through your time alone, in and through those desperate times when you were crying out to Him and trusting Him and having to take those thoughts that were trying to discourage you and turn them around and speak the truth of God's word, because God's word is alive and it's active, right? And it speaks to us, especially when those lies, those doubts come in. His word reminds us. They remind us of who God is. They remind us that He's with us, that He will never leave us nor forsake us. And so even in that time, Lisette, as I'm hearing you, I could see that He was there. He's always been there for you. I truly thank God, Lisette, that He brought you through this, that your baby niece came through and that she was healed and that she made it, and I know God has a plan and a purpose for her and just your entire family. Lisette, I've known you since you were a little girl, and you've always been just a funny, sweet, gentle, loving little girl, and that's the woman that you are, Lisette. You are a nurturer, just something about you. And when I see you with your babies, you're such a loving mother. And like you said, what happened in an instant brought about shame, it brought about guilt and condemnation. I believe that that's where God meets us. He meets us in that darkest hour of our life, where it's just like, I can't, Lord, but I know you can. I can't, but you can. And so tell us more about what happened in your relationship with the Lord.
Well, it not only brought me to Him, but it just showed me the power of forgiveness and love and family and dependence on Him, because it didn't just bring me, it brought my husband, it brought my sister-in-law closer to Him. It was just all I don't want to say something that needed to happen, but it's something that happened for the better to have us all closer to Him, because fast forward a year, 2021, I still couldn't talk to my sister-in-law, but everything got put aside, and my sister-in-law was open to talking to me in 2021, during the pandemic, and that was just shocking in itself, because I literally thought I would never see her again. I thought I would never be able to see my niece again. I thought just so much, and for her to she said she didn't want to hear my story, but what happened. She just believed that God told her to go talk to me, forgive me, and just move on and heal. That's what she told me when we had our talk. And
Lord,
I just couldn't help but cry, and just we hugged, and that that in itself, us two hugging was the most powerful feeling moment in my life, I want to say. Just because you could feel God's presence in that moment, His forgiveness, her ability to come up to me and hug me and just say, I forgive you. It'll take time to continue to heal, our process, our relationship. But I forgive you. And I was just totally blown away. And it brought my husband closer. It brought I'm telling you, everybody around us got closer to God because of what had happened. Because we all prayed every night for my niece. We prayed for me to get back to my children. We prayed for the court stuff to get situated. We prayed for everything you could possibly think of. And most importantly, like we just prayed his healing power over my niece. And sure enough, that's what happened. Like she went from almost not making it to 100% recovered. She is the smartest little thing you could ever see. She is the risk taker, and just seeing how smart she is mind blowing every time. And just to know how far she has come from being 3 months old to now almost 4 years old or almost 5 years old is crazy. It is crazy to see. I didn't know this. You could probably like backtrack this, but during that time too, like in 2019, April, I found out I was pregnant, and everything is still pretty fresh. My sister-in-law is still having to go to doctor's visits and see how her brain is developing, and I still have no contact with her. But I found out I was pregnant in April, and that was scary to me. It was the most terrifying thing in the world, because I would have those thoughts of like shame and like, why am I being a mom again? Like, I don't deserve this. I'm not supposed to be around any more newborn, I don't want to be around any babies. I don't want to have to take care of a baby. It terrified me. And just to find out that I was pregnant, it was shocking. I don't know how else to describe it. Just scary. And once the months went by, I just felt I was still in my Bible. I still kept going to church. I was praying. I was like, Lord, if you've made me a mom again, then like I know I can't be that horrible of a person. I can't be that ugly. I can't be that evil. I know I'm not. And you know that if I am being a mom, it's because you have a plan for me. I know that you placed this baby girl inside of me, a girl especially inside of me, because you know that I am able to love and be careful and be delicate and gentle, loving to this baby. And I know that you are with me in this pregnancy. And I just kept telling myself that when I would feel scared or when I would feel her kick, I was thinking, how am I going to mess this up? How am I going to hurt this baby? And those were just lies from the enemy, and I know that now. And I knew that then, and it was just harder to believe it then, but I kept telling myself, if God wants you to have a baby, it's because you're supposed to have it. And it was just crazy during that time because of everything that had happened. And once my baby girl was here, I immediately, as soon as she came out and they put her on my chest, I thanked God. I prayed right then and there out loud, and I just was so thankful. And I think that's why I have such a strong and close bond with my daughter right now, and why she never leaves my side and never wants to leave me alone. And I'm just so thankful for her.
As I'm listening to you, she's a reminder of God's redeeming love.
Yeah, she definitely is. She shows me all the good parts of myself. All of my children do, and I'm just so thankful. And during that time, it was just like unbelievable to even think about. But I know she was brought in for a reason, and it was to bring us together because the day my sister-in-law uh, wanted to meet with me and agreed to meet with me was the first time she saw my daughter since she was born. And that was like another reason my sister-in-law said, we wasted all this time when I could have met my niece. I've missed my niece and nephew, you know. I've missed my family, and that itself was something that was taken away that didn't need to be, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. And one thing you mentioned was that through this, you learned the power of forgiveness. I think that that's one thing that really stood out to me as you, not just, your mother-in-law taking you in, even though this is happening to her daughter and her granddaughter, but just giving you that benefit of the doubt and loving you and caring and taking you in under her roof. And then this moment that you have with your sister-in-law where you embrace each other and you saw God's forgiveness for us. They said that you were able to witness and experience the power of God's forgiveness through these women. And I'm sure, through your husband too, and everything that happened there, because situations like these put a strain on our marriages, on our relationships, but he was still set on loving you and caring for you and defending you. And man, just what a beautiful reflection of God's love and his redeeming grace.
Yeah.
Lisette, I ask all my guests before we finish our conversation, what advice, what words of encouragement would you have for a young woman maybe going through a situation similar to yours who could relate? Maybe it's not the same exact circumstances, but maybe they're in a position where they feel helpless, alone, hopeless. They feel ashamed. They feel that guilt in their heart, and they hear the lies. What words would you have for that woman?
I would say don't let the dark thoughts take control. Don't ever give up. Just pray. You are in a situation where you can't be with your kids. Don't think you're never going to be able to see them, because you never know how God can change that around. You never know what his forgiveness can do for a person. You never know how much stronger you and your family can come out on the other side. But once you are open to accepting help, once you are open to realizing you can't do it anymore, that you are not as powerful as you thought, you are not in control, that's when you have to realize God is the only one who can change your situation. He is the only one that can give you that peace of mind, the peace in your heart, the peace for your family that you need, and that he does miracles that can change everything, that can change your whole family and not just you. That you will see things grow stronger, bonds that grow from 0 to 100, bonds that grow from maybe hating each other to being best friends, thinking you will never see this person again, to seeing them every weekend, every day, talking to them, seeing someone fight for you unconditionally, because that's what our God does. He fights for us every day unconditionally, and he loves us so much. He will give you something that you think you don't deserve, something you feel terrified of having and just not wanting it, because he knows that he has a plan for you, and that no matter what you think in your mind, God will put different thoughts into you and make you turn those thoughts right around.
Thank you so much, Lisette, for sharing your heart, for sharing your story, your scars. Thank you for being courageous enough to just open up and speak on what had happened to you and to your family. You are just so precious to me and Omar, and I just want you to know that. And we love you, and I'm just in awe of what God has done in your life, in your family. It's really His grace, and I'm always going back to His grace, His unmerited favor that He has for us, and that He calls us His children, children of God, right? We are loved by Him, and He fathers us, and He cares for us, even in the midst of darkness, even in the midst of dark situations. He's there, and He brings us to His light, and He brings us to His truth. He brings us to a place where we become dependent on Him and His strength, where we become dependent on Him and who He is, and that His word is our truth. And when those lies come, we combat those lies with the truth of His word, the truth of His promises. I just thank you so much for being on this podcast and for sharing your story. For all you listeners, thank you for taking the time to listen to today's episode. We ask you to tune in to listen to Her Scars Tell a Story.